So when I stand here tonight and consider how we in America fare when judged by this measure, how we treat our most vulnerable members and our prisoners, I cannot help but think of the millions of poor people, overwhelmingly poor folks of color, who are cycling in and out of our criminal justice system today, in this era of mass incarceration, in this post-King, post-civil rights era, a time when our prison population has more than quintupled and millions of people are now permanently locked up or locked out, stripped of the very civil and human rights that Dr. King and so many others risked their lives for and some even died for. It is a time when a black man, a father, can be choked to death by the police, begging for his life on video for the crime of selling untaxed cigarettes, and a grand jury comprised of men and women, fellow American citizens, could say no crime had occurred at all. Snuffing out the life of a black man over so petty an offense is no crime at all. It is a time when our collective answer to the violence that persists on the streets of Chicago, New Orleans, Detroit, and beyond has been more violence. That's been our answer. For we must never forget that imprisonment itself is a form of violence. It is legalized, state-sponsored violence. But it is violence, nonetheless, to take a person out of his home or off the street at gunpoint, even if you have a badge, and force them into a cage. And it is difficult to imagine that Dr. King would have believed that in communities ravaged by poverty, hopelessness, and despair, that the answer would simply be more violence, that we could punish and threaten our way to peaceful communities, to a place of justice. Today, a prison industrial complex, a prison system run for profit, a system of mass incarceration has been born. It is a system unprecedented in world history, and it is one that is so violent, so brutal, so unrelenting in its punitiveness that many Americans can scarcely believe the truth about this system when confronted with the facts. And for poor people and people of color, this system extends far beyond the prison walls into the streets of Ferguson and New York City and Chicago into rural Louisiana and beyond. Once the system targets you, sets its sights on you, it's nearly impossible to escape its grip, its constant surveillance and control. The whites-only signs have come down, but new signs have gone up. Notices placed in job applications, rental agreements, loan applications, welfare forms, school applications, informing the public that the millions of people, branded felons and criminals in this era of mass incarceration, are not wanted here. Discrimination is now perfectly legal against them. The lynch mobs may be long gone, but the threat of police violence is ever present. A wrong move or sudden gesture could be massive retaliation by the police. A wallet can be mistaken for a gun. It is a system that has arisen out of the ashes of slavery and Jim Crow, a system that has branded tens of millions of people in this country as felons, shamed and scorned, relegated to a permanent second-class status. It is a system that rests on the premise that some lives simply don't matter. So if we're serious, and we're going to ask the question, how much progress has our nation made in achieving the dream that inspired the Civil Rights Act, the dream that fed the courage of those who marched in Selma? Then I think we've got to ask ourselves whether we continue to create and maintain systems and structures that guarantee the exclusion, suffering, and oppression of others. If we're going to measure progress, we need to look not up to the top of the pyramid, to Barack Obama for evidence of progress, but down, and ask ourselves how we as a society treat the most vulnerable as well as their families. Not how the relative few, the rich or famous, are doing. And when we ask ourselves that question, an uncomfortable reality begins to emerge. We must confront an inconvenient truth, the truth that we in America have done it again. We have rebirthed a caste-like system in this country, a new Jim Crow. Now, I must confess that I'm very tempted right now to give you all a new Jim Crow lecture. An overview of the war on drugs and the war on crime and how it all actually works as opposed to how it's advertised, and how these wars, and more importantly, the war mentality, us versus them, search and destroy, lock them up and throw away the key, has decimated communities of color, and how our legal system has conspired to keep millions of people cycling in and out of prison for the rest of their lives. For I know that many people in this audience may think they know how the system works, just like I once did, but really don't. Some of you may think you have some idea